I'll never forget the day a billionaire CEO spat in my face at a charity gala, completely unaware that my husband could destroy her entire empire with a single phone call. She had no idea I was married to the man who controlled her company's fate. What happened next will absolutely shock you. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from. And if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow, I've saved something extra special for you. My name is Victoria Hayes, and I'm 26 years old. My life today is nothing like what most people would expect when they discover I'm married to one of the most influential men in international finance. 3 years ago, I was just another recent graduate working 2 jobs to make ends meet. During the day, I taught elementary school kids, and in the evenings, I worked at a small family-owned bookstore in downtown Portland. I lived in a tiny studio apartment that barely fit my bed and a small desk. My biggest luxury was treating myself to a fancy coffee once a month, and I shopped exclusively at thrift stores and discount retailers. I was happy, though. I loved my students, I loved books, and I had big dreams of maybe opening my own educational center someday. Then everything changed when I met Alexander at the bookstore where I worked evenings. He started coming in every Monday and Wednesday, always browsing the business and philosophy sections, always buying at least 3 books, and always engaging me in these incredible conversations about education, social justice, and making the world a better place. For 4 months, we talked about everything from childhood literacy programs to income inequality. He never once mentioned what he did for work, never flashed expensive anything, never even pulled out a credit card that looked particularly fancy. He paid cash for his books, left generous tips in our staff jar, and treated me like my opinions mattered more than anything else in the world. When he finally asked me to dinner, I said yes because he made me laugh until my stomach hurt, and because he listened to me talk about my dreams with genuine interest and enthusiasm. Alexander seemed like this wonderfully grounded, intellectually curious man who cared about the same social issues I did. It wasn't until our 5th date, when he picked me up in what I later learned was a custom Aston Martin, that I started suspecting Alexander wasn't exactly the struggling graduate student I'd assumed he was. When I asked about the car, he just smiled and said it was a gift from his business partners. The truth came out during our 2nd month of dating, when a mutual friend accidentally mentioned Alexander's full name at a dinner party. Alexander Rothschild Hayes wasn't just some guy who loved books and had strong opinions about educational reform. He was the Alexander Hayes, founder and CEO of Hayes International Holdings, a global investment firm managing over $15 billion in assets. My sweet, thoughtful book lover was one of the most powerful financial minds in the world, someone whose investment decisions could make or break entire industries. The man who remembered how I liked my coffee and asked about my students by name controlled more wealth than some small countries. Our relationship moved quickly after that revelation, but not because I was impressed by his money. Actually, his wealth made me nervous. I worried I didn't fit into his world, that I was too ordinary, too simple for someone of his status. But Alexander consistently proved that my background was exactly what he loved about me. He told me my perspective kept him grounded, that my passion for education reminded him why he'd started his company in the first place, to create positive change in the world. When we got married 14 months later, it was a small ceremony in my hometown with just our families and closest friends. No media attention, no society photographers, just 2 people who genuinely cherished each other. But adapting to life as the wife of a billionaire has been the most challenging journey I've ever undertaken. Alexander always encourages me to stay true to myself, to dress how I feel comfortable, and never to change who I am for anyone's expectations. He says my authenticity is what made him fall in love with me, and it's what keeps him inspired every day. Still, when you're constantly around people wearing designer gowns that cost more than teachers' annual salaries, when every social event involves conversations about private jets and yacht clubs, it's impossible not to feel like an outsider sometimes. I still prefer my comfortable dresses from department stores, my practical shoes that I can actually walk in, and my simple jewelry that has sentimental value rather than astronomical price tags. Alexander tells me constantly that my down-to-earth nature is his favorite thing about me, that I keep him connected to what really matters in life. But sometimes that authenticity comes with consequences I never could have anticipated. About 8 months ago, Alexander started receiving concerning reports about Celestial Dynamics, a major tech corporation that Hayes International Holdings had significant investments in. The company's stock price had been climbing steadily, making it one of our portfolio's strongest performers, But troubling rumors were circulating about the CEO's leadership style and company culture. Multiple sources were reporting that Celestial Dynamics had serious internal problems. Former employees were speaking anonymously about toxic management, discrimination, and a corporate culture that prioritized appearances over actual innovation. There were whispers about major clients considering pulling their contracts due to concerns about the company's direction. Alexander was in the middle of negotiating a massive merger deal that would span 3 continents and affect thousands of jobs. He was flying between London, Tokyo, and New York almost weekly, working 18-hour days to ensure every detail was perfect. The merger was too important and complex for him to personally investigate the Celestial Dynamics situation. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. That's when I volunteered to attend their annual charity gala as his representative. It seemed like the perfect opportunity to observe the company's leadership in a social setting and get a feel for their corporate culture firsthand. I thought I'd be able to blend into the crowd, watch how they treated their employees and business partners, and report back with useful insights. Alexander was initially hesitant about sending me into what could be a potentially uncomfortable social situation, but I convinced him that I'd be fine. After all, I was used to being around wealthy people by now, and a charity gala seemed like a safe, controlled environment where everyone would be on their best behavior. I had no idea I was about to witness firsthand exactly why Celestial Dynamics was developing such a terrible reputation, or that I would become the target of the most degrading experience of my entire life. The morning of the gala, I chose my outfit carefully. I wanted to look respectful and appropriate for a formal charity event, but I also wanted to stay true to my own style. I selected a simple black dress that I'd bought at Nordstrom Rack, the nicest dress in my closet, but still something that had cost less than $100. I paired it with the pearl earrings Alexander had given me for our first anniversary, not because they were expensive, but because they had special meaning to us. I chose comfortable black heels that I could actually walk in without stumbling, and I carried a small clutch purse that had been my grandmother's. Looking in the mirror, I saw exactly what I wanted to see, a woman who looked put together and respectful, but not trying too hard to be something she wasn't. I looked like someone who belonged at a charity event focused on educational funding, which was perfect since that was a cause genuinely close to my heart. I had no idea that my modest appearance would soon make me a target for the kind of cruelty I thought only existed in movies. The Celestial Dynamics Charity Gala was being held at the Grand Cascade Hotel, one of the most prestigious venues in the city. The ballroom was absolutely stunning, with crystal chandeliers casting rainbow light across marble columns and tables decorated with centerpieces that probably cost more than most people's monthly rent. As I walked through the entrance, I should have felt excited to be there representing Alexander at such an important industry event. Instead, I immediately felt that familiar knot of anxiety in my stomach. The other guests were wearing gowns that I recognized from fashion magazines, jewelry that sparkled like small suns, and they carried themselves with the kind of confidence that comes from never having to check price tags. The moment I stepped into the ballroom, I could feel eyes assessing my appearance and finding it lacking. Women in designer gowns glanced at my simple dress with barely concealed smirks. Men in expensive tuxedos looked right through me, as if I wasn't worth acknowledging. The few people who did speak to me asked questions clearly designed to figure out why someone like me was at an event like this. I tried to remind myself why I was there and focus on observing the company's leadership in action, but it was difficult to concentrate when I felt so obviously out of place. I walked slowly around the ballroom, listening to conversations and watching how different people interacted with each other. That's when I first saw her. Diana Pemberton, CEO of Celestial Dynamics, was holding court near the silent auction tables. She was absolutely stunning in the way that only unlimited resources can make someone stunning. Her blonde hair was styled in perfect waves, her makeup was flawless, and her silver gown probably cost more than most people's cars. But it wasn't her appearance that caught my attention, it was how she was treating the waitstaff. I watched her snap her fingers at servers, dismiss them without making eye contact, and generally behave as if the people working the event were invisible furniture rather than human beings trying to do their jobs. I was observing her interactions when a server accidentally brushed against her elbow while reaching for an empty glass on a nearby table. Diana's reaction was immediate and vicious. "Are you kidding me?" She shrieked loud enough that conversations throughout that section of the ballroom came to a halt. "Do you have any idea how much this dress costs? If you've damaged it in any way, your pathetic little catering company will be hearing from my lawyers." The server, a young man who couldn't have been older than 20, turned bright red and started apologizing profusely. He explained that he barely touched her elbow and certainly hadn't damaged her dress in any way, but Diana wasn't interested in hearing explanations. "I don't care about your excuses," she continued, her voice getting louder and more theatrical. "People like you need to learn to stay in your lane and show proper respect to your betters. Maybe if you focused more on doing your job correctly instead of making pathetic attempts to mingle with people who are completely out of your league, incidents like this wouldn't happen." I felt my stomach drop as I watched this powerful CEO publicly humiliate a young man who was just trying to do his job. The server looked like he wanted to disappear, and other guests were either laughing along with Diana or looking uncomfortable but not speaking up. That's when I made a decision that changed everything. I couldn't just stand there and watch someone be treated so cruelly without saying anything. I walked over to where Diana was still berating the server and cleared my throat gently. "Excuse me," I said, trying to keep my voice calm and respectful. "I think there might be a misunderstanding here. I was watching, and he barely brushed your elbow. He certainly didn't damage your dress." Diana turned toward me with the kind of look people reserve for something unpleasant they've just stepped in. Her eyes moved up and down my outfit with obvious disdain before she spoke. "I'm sorry," she said in a voice dripping with false sweetness, "but I don't recall asking for input from the help. Shouldn't you be in the kitchen with the rest of the catering staff?" The assumption hit me like a physical blow. She had looked at my simple dress and modest jewelry and automatically assumed I was working the event rather than attending it as a guest. The insult was so casual, so reflexive, that it was somehow even more hurtful than if she had been deliberately trying to wound me. "I'm actually a guest at this event," I replied, still trying to maintain my composure. "I just thought you might want to know that your server didn't actually do anything wrong." Diana's laugh was sharp and cruel, designed to carry across the room and attract maximum attention. "A guest?" she repeated mockingly. "At a $5,000 per plate charity gala? Sweetie, I know every person who belongs at this event, and you are definitely not one of them." By now we had attracted a significant audience. Other guests had stopped their conversations to watch our exchange, some pulling out phones to capture what they probably assumed would be entertaining drama for their social media feeds. "Maybe you wandered in from whatever discount store you bought that tragic little dress at," Diana continued, her voice getting louder and more vicious with each word. "But this is a gathering for serious business leaders and philanthropists, not a place for wannabes to play dress-up and pretend they belong." I felt my cheeks burning with embarrassment, but I also felt a growing anger at the sheer injustice of how she was treating both me and the server. This woman was publicly humiliating people based purely on her assumptions about their appearance and social status. "I understand you don't recognize me," I said, my voice a little stronger now, "but I am here as a legitimate guest. And regardless of who I am or why I'm here, there's no excuse for treating people the way you just treated that server." Diana's eyes lit up with malicious glee, like a predator who had just spotted vulnerable prey. "Oh, how precious," she cooed, her voice carrying clearly throughout the surrounding area. "The little shop girl wants to lecture me about proper behavior. Let me explain something to you, darling. I am Diana Pemberton, CEO of Celestial Dynamics, one of the most successful tech companies in the world. I employ thousands of people and generate billions in revenue." She stepped closer to me, invading my personal space in a way that felt deliberately intimidating. "You, on the other hand, are clearly some pathetic social climber who somehow managed to sneak into an event where you absolutely do not belong. The fact that you think you have any right to criticize me is honestly hilarious." The crowd around us was growing larger. I could see at least a dozen phones recording our confrontation, and more people were pushing closer to get a better view of whatever drama was unfolding. "I'm not trying to cause any trouble," I said, trying one more time to diffuse the situation. "I just think everyone deserves to be treated with basic respect, regardless of their job or appearance." "Basic respect?" Diana's voice rose to a pitch that could probably be heard throughout the entire ballroom. "You want to talk about respect? How about showing some respect for your betters? How about recognizing that some people have earned the right to expect excellence from their inferiors? That's when she said the words that made my blood run cold. "You know what your problem is," Diana announced to our growing audience. "You people always think you're entitled to things you haven't earned. You think you can dress up in your little costume and pretend to be one of us, but everyone can see exactly what you really are." She leaned in closer, her voice dropping to what she probably thought was a menacing whisper, but was still loud enough for everyone nearby to hear clearly. "You're nothing," she hissed. "You're a nobody who will always be a nobody, and the sooner you accept that, the better off everyone will be." Then, without any warning whatsoever, Diana Pemberton drew back and spat directly in my face. The warm saliva hit my cheek and began sliding down toward my jaw. For a moment, the entire ballroom seemed to freeze in shocked silence. Even the background music seemed to pause as hundreds of people processed what they had just witnessed. I stood there with spit running down my face, feeling more humiliated than I had ever felt in my entire life. The physical disgust of having someone's saliva on my skin was nothing compared to the emotional trauma of being degraded so publicly and so cruelly. But as I reached into my clutch for a tissue to wipe my face, I felt something else beneath the humiliation and disgust, a cold, calm determination that surprised me with its intensity. I cleaned my face carefully, taking my time, letting the moment stretch out as the entire ballroom waited to see what would happen next. Then I pulled out my phone and scrolled through my contacts to find the number I needed. "Hi, Alexander," I said when he answered, my voice perfectly steady despite everything that had just happened. "I'm at the Celestial Dynamics charity gala. You need to make some phone calls, now." Diana, who had been basking in the approval and shocked laughter of some of the watching guests, suddenly focused on my phone call with laser intensity. "Who are you calling?" she demanded, her voice still loud but now with a slight edge of uncertainty. "Security? Go ahead and call them. They'll escort you out where you belong." I made a second call, this time to Alexander's head of communications. "This is Victoria Hayes," I said clearly, making sure my voice carried throughout the room. "I need you to prepare a statement about Hayes International Holdings divesting from Celestial Dynamics, effective immediately. There's been an incident." The use of my married name seemed to finally penetrate Diana's consciousness. Her face, which had been flushed with excitement and power just moments before, began to show the first signs of genuine confusion. "Hayes?" she repeated, her voice smaller now. That's not your real name. You're making this up." I didn't respond to her directly. Instead, I made one final call. "Alexander," I said, knowing that everyone around us could hear every word, "you're going to want to sell our Celestial Dynamics position first thing tomorrow morning. All of it. And you might want to let our friends at Wellington Capital and Morrison Holdings know why." By mentioning Alexander's business partners, I had just threatened to trigger a cascade of divestment that could potentially destroy Celestial Dynamics' stock price within days. Everyone in that ballroom who knew anything about finance understood exactly what I had just done. Diana's face went through several rapid transformations as the implications of my phone calls began to sink in. Confusion gave way to recognition. Recognition gave way to dawning horror, and dawning horror gave way to absolute terror. The crowd of onlookers was buzzing with excited whispers now, phones coming back out to capture this dramatic reversal of fortune. The woman who had just spat in my face was beginning to realize that she might have just destroyed her own career, and I stood there in my simple black dress, feeling more powerful than I ever had in my entire life, knowing that sometimes the most important moments come when you're least prepared for them, and that true strength isn't about designer gowns or corporate titles. It's about knowing who you are and refusing to let anyone make you forget it. It took exactly 18 minutes for Alexander to arrive at the Grand Cascade Hotel. I know because I was watching the elegant grandfather clock near the silent auction tables, counting down every second until my husband walked through those ballroom doors. When he did, followed by 2 members of his executive team and our personal attorney, the entire atmosphere in the room shifted like a seismic change. Alexander Hayes doesn't look like what most people picture when they think of a billionaire financier. He's not flashy, doesn't wear ostentatious jewelry or designer suits covered in logos, but there's something about his presence that immediately commands attention and respect. Maybe it's the way he moves with quiet confidence, or how conversations naturally pause when he enters a room. Or maybe it's simply the knowledge that this man's decisions can alter the financial landscape of entire industries with a single phone call. Diana's face went through its final transformation as she watched Alexander stride purposefully across the ballroom toward me. I could see the exact moment when recognition hit her, when she realized that the nobody she had just humiliated and spat on was married to one of the most powerful men in international finance. "That's my wife you just assaulted," Alexander said, his voice quiet but carrying clearly throughout the ballroom. His arm went protectively around my shoulders, and I felt some of the tension I'd been holding finally begin to release. I straightened my spine and found my voice again, stronger now than it had been all evening. "I'm Victoria Hayes," I announced to the room, though I was looking directly at Diana, "and my husband controls the investment firm that holds the largest single stake in Celestial Dynamics." The ballroom erupted in excited whispers and gasps. Phones that had been recording the confrontation now swung toward Alexander, trying to capture his reaction to what had just transpired. Business leaders who had been watching our exchange like entertainment suddenly realized they were witnessing what could become a major financial scandal. Diana's mouth opened and closed several times, but no sound emerged. She looked like she was drowning in plain sight, desperately trying to find something to say that could possibly undo what had just happened. You can't be," she finally managed to stammer. "You're dressed like a normal person. Like someone who values substance over appearances." I finished for her. "Like someone who believes that how you treat people says everything about your character, regardless of what you're wearing or how much money you have in your bank account." Alexander was furious. I could feel it radiating from him in controlled waves, but his voice remained perfectly calm and professional. "I want to see security footage of this entire incident," he told our attorney. "All of it, from multiple angles." "That won't be necessary," I said quietly. "Everyone here witnessed what happened, and I'm sure dozens of people recorded it." I gestured toward the phones that were still pointed in our direction. Diana fell to her knees right there on the marble floor of the Grand Cascade Hotel ballroom, literally dropped to her knees in her silver designer gown, tears streaming down her perfectly contoured face and ruining her flawless makeup. "Please," she begged, her voice breaking with desperate sobs. "I didn't know who you were. I'm so sorry. Please don't destroy my company. I have employees, shareholders, people depending on me. I made a terrible mistake." For a moment, I felt a flicker of sympathy watching this powerful woman reduced to begging on a ballroom floor. Then I remembered the cruelty in her voice when she was humiliating the young server. I remembered the vicious pleasure she had taken in trying to make me feel worthless. I remembered every person who had probably been treated exactly the same way by this woman over the years. "You're right," I said, my voice carrying clearly through the silent ballroom. "You didn't know who I was, and that's exactly the problem. You treated me terribly not because of anything I had done, but because you assumed I didn't have the power to fight back. You spat in my face because you thought I was nobody." Alexander squeezed my shoulder gently, offering silent support while letting me handle the situation in my own way. "What do you want to do?" he asked quietly. I thought about it for a long moment, aware that hundreds of people were hanging on my next words, that whatever I decided would likely be shared across social media within hours and could potentially impact thousands of jobs. "Diana," I said, addressing her directly as she knelt on the floor, "stand up." She struggled to her feet, mascara streaking down her cheeks, her silver gown wrinkled from kneeling on the marble floor. "I could destroy your company," I continued. "I could have you arrested for assault. I could make sure you never work in any industry again. But what would that accomplish besides creating more suffering in the world?" Diana looked confused, as if she couldn't process that I might show her mercy after what she had done. "Instead, I'm going to give you an opportunity that you didn't give me tonight," I said. "A chance to prove that you're capable of being better than your worst moment." I turned to address the crowd of onlookers who were still watching this drama unfold, many of them live streaming to their social media followers. "I want everyone here to understand something important," I said, my voice projecting clearly throughout the ballroom. "What happened here tonight was wrong on every level. No human being should ever be treated the way Diana treated that server, or the way she treated me. But we all have the power to choose how we respond to cruelty. I looked back at Diana, who was listening with desperate attention to every word I spoke. Diana, you have 48 hours to publicly apologize to that server and implement a comprehensive respect and dignity training program for every employee at Celestial Dynamics. You're going to create a fund for workplace harassment victims, and you're going to donate personally to organizations that support service workers' rights. Alexander nodded approvingly. As a businessman, he understood that giving Diana a path to redemption was ultimately better for everyone than simply destroying her company and putting thousands of people out of work. If you do these things genuinely and completely, I continued, Hayes International Holdings will maintain its investment in your company. If you don't, or if I ever hear about you treating anyone with this kind of disrespect again, we will divest completely and encourage every firm we work with to do the same. Diana nodded frantically, tears of relief now mixing with her tears of fear and shame. Yes, she whispered. Yes, I'll do all of that. Thank you. Thank you for giving me a second chance I don't deserve. But I wasn't finished yet. There's one more thing, I said, my voice firm. You're going to personally serve dinner to every member of the catering staff tonight, and you're going to thank each one of them individually for their hard work. You're going to remember that every person in this room, regardless of their job or their outfit, deserves to be treated with basic human dignity. The crowd murmured its approval. Several people actually started clapping, and soon the entire ballroom was applauding not just my decision, but the idea that powerful people should be held accountable for their actions while still being offered opportunities for redemption. Over the next hour, I watched Diana Pemberton do something I suspect she had never done in her entire adult life. She walked into the hotel's service areas, found an apron, and began personally serving dinner to every member of the catering staff. She looked each server in the eye, thanked them by name when possible, and genuinely apologized for her earlier behavior. The young man she had originally berated looked shocked when the CEO of a billion-dollar company personally brought him a plate of food and apologized for humiliating him. But as the evening progressed, I could see Diana beginning to understand something she had apparently never learned. That treating people with respect and kindness actually felt better than wielding power cruelly. Alexander and I stayed for the entire charity portion of the evening, and I was amazed by how differently people treated me once they knew who I was. Suddenly, my simple black dress was charmingly understated, and my modest jewelry was elegantly classic. The same outfit that had made me invisible earlier was now being praised as evidence of my down-to-earth authenticity. It was a powerful lesson in how much people's perceptions are influenced by status rather than actual character. As we were leaving the hotel, Alexander took my hand and stopped walking. "I'm proud of you," he said, looking directly into my eyes. "Not just for how you handled Diana, but for the grace you showed even after being treated so horribly. You could have destroyed her completely, but you chose to create an opportunity for growth instead." "Everyone deserves a chance to be better than their worst moment," I replied, "even someone who spits in people's faces at charity galas." The video of Diana spitting on me did go viral exactly as I had expected it would. But the story that emerged wasn't the simple tale of revenge that people might have anticipated. Instead, it became a powerful conversation starter about workplace dignity, the importance of treating service workers with respect, and the possibility of redemption even after terrible behavior. The comments were overwhelmingly supportive, with thousands of people sharing their own stories of being judged or mistreated based on their appearance or perceived social status. Teachers, nurses, servers, retail workers, and people from every profession imaginable wrote about times they had been dismissed or disrespected simply because others assumed they didn't matter. But the most meaningful response came exactly 1 week later, when I received a handwritten letter from Diana Pemberton herself. She wrote that the experience had been the most humbling and educational moment of her entire career. She had implemented every change I had requested, but more importantly, she had begun volunteering at a local homeless shelter to better understand how her privileged position could be used to help others rather than to elevate herself above them. She wrote that she had never realized how much pain her casual cruelty could cause, or how much joy could come from treating everyone with genuine respect and kindness. The letter was 3 pages long and felt completely sincere, 2 months later, Celestial Dynamics was featured in a major business magazine as an example of how companies could transform their workplace culture through leadership accountability and genuine commitment to employee dignity. Their stock price actually increased as their reputation improved, proving that treating people well really is good business. But the experience changed me just as much as it changed Diana. I realized that I had been judging myself just as harshly as she had judged me. I had been feeling inadequate in Alexander's world because I didn't look like what people expected a billionaire's wife to look like. I had been apologizing for my background, my preferences, my authentic self. Alexander fell in love with exactly who I am, not some polished version of who I thought I should become. That night at the charity gala taught me to stop apologizing for being genuine and to start celebrating the strength that comes from staying true to your values even when it's difficult. Now I dress however makes me happy, regardless of the setting or the expectations of others. If I want to wear a sundress to a board meeting, I wear a sundress. If I want to carry my grandmother's vintage purse to a corporate event, I carry it with pride. And if anyone has a problem with my authenticity, they can take it up with my husband, though I've learned I'm perfectly capable of standing up for myself. More importantly, that experience taught me never to make assumptions about people based on their appearance, their job, or their circumstances. The person cleaning your office building might be working 3 jobs to put themselves through medical school. The woman in the worn coat at the grocery store might be a millionaire who chooses to live simply. The quiet teenager serving your coffee might be a genius who will change the world someday. Diana and I actually became unlikely friends over the following months. She started asking my advice about workplace policies and employee relations, and I helped her understand how to use her influence to create positive change rather than to intimidate people. She learned that real power comes from lifting others up, not from pushing them down. The charity gala raised over $2 million for educational programs, which was its original purpose. But it accomplished something even more valuable by starting conversations about dignity, respect, and the importance of treating every human being as worthy of kindness, regardless of their perceived status. 6 months later, Diana invited Alexander and me to Celestial Dynamics' first annual Employee Appreciation Gala, where she personally thanked every member of their staff and announced a new program providing college scholarships for employees' children. Watching her speak with genuine warmth and respect to people she once would have dismissed was one of the most inspiring transformations I've ever witnessed. That night taught me that our worst moments don't have to define us if we're willing to learn and grow from them. It showed me that sometimes the most important conversations happen when we least expect them, and that standing up for what's right can create positive changes that ripple far beyond what we initially imagine. So that's my story about the night a CEO spat in my face and accidentally learned one of the most important lessons of her life. It was humiliating and painful, but it taught me to value my own worth and never to judge anyone based on appearances or assumptions. Have you ever been treated badly because of how you looked or what job you had? Or maybe you've caught yourself making unfair assumptions about someone based on their appearance. I'd love to hear your stories in the comments below, because these conversations are how we all learn to be better. If this story made you think about how you treat the people around you, please give this video a thumbs up and subscribe for more real stories about standing up for what's right and finding strength in unexpected places. Remember, you never know who you're talking to or what their story might be, so always choose kindness. It costs nothing, but it can change everything. I'm Victoria, and I'll see you in the next story. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.